To another week of reading. Okay, so it's Monday the 11th of May, and we are reading All's Well, chapter 8. Bertie came every Sunday after that. Sometimes it couldn't be for long because he had detention back at school, or maybe I'd have to send him away because father was down for the weekend, shooting pheasants in the park with his friends. We had to be careful. He did mend my best box kite, but after a while we forgot all about flying kites and we just talked and walked. Bertie and I lived for our Sundays. In those next 2 years we became first good companions and then best of friends. We never told each other we were because we didn't need to. The more I got to know him, the more I believed everything about Africa and about the White Prince in the circus somewhere in France. I believed him too when he told me again and again how somehow, someday, he would find his white lion and make sure that he'd never have to live behind bars again. The school holidays always dragged interminably because Bertie wasn't there on Sundays. But at least there was no lessons to endure with no lips. She always went off in the holidays to stay with her sister by the sea in Margate. Instead of her lessons, though, Nanny Mason would take me on endless nature walks. Walks on the wild side, she called them. I grumbled and stamped my feet, but it's so boring, I'd tell her. If we had zebras and water buffaloes and elephants and baboons and giraffes and wildebeests and spotted hyenas and black mamba snakes and vultures and lions, I wouldn't mind. But a few deer, a fox's hole and maybe a badger's set, a dozen rabbit dropping, one robin's nest and some cuckoo pint. Once, before I could stop myself, I said, "And do you know, Nanny, there's white lions in Africa, real white lions." "Fancy that," she laughed. "You and your fairy tales, Millie. You read too many books." Bertie and I didn't dare write letters to each other in case someone found them and read them. But school came round again and he'd be there under the wych elm on the first Sunday at 3 o'clock without fail. What we found to talk about all the time I could not honestly remember. He sometimes said how we could never look at the circus poster without thinking of the White Prince. But as time passed, he talked less and less of the White Lion, and then not at all. I thought that maybe he'd forgotten all about him. We both grew up too quickly. We had one last summer term together before I was to be sent off to a convent school by the sea in Sussex, and he was to go away to college under the shadow of Canterbury Cathedral. We treasured each meeting, knowing how few we had left. We were silent in our sadness. The love between us stayed unspoken. We knew it when our eyes met, when our hands touched. We were just so sure of each other. Before he left me that last Sunday, he gave me a kite he had made in carpentry lessons at school and told me I had to think of him every time I flew it. Then he went his way to college and I went mine to my convent, and we didn't see each other again. I was always very careful when I flew the kite he'd given me, just in case I lost it up a tree and couldn't get it back again. I thought that if I lost the kite, it would be like losing Bertie forever. I kept it on top of my cupboard in my bedroom. It's still up there to this day. Now, we did write because we were away from home and it was safe to do so. We wrote letters that talked to each other just as we had done all those years on Wood Hill. My letters were long and about tittle-tattle at school, about how much happier it was at home now no lips had left. His were always short and his handwriting so tiny you could hardly read it. He was no happier shut inside the walls of his cathedral precinct than he had been before. There were bells, he wrote, always bells, bells to wake you up, bells for meals, bells for lessons, bells, 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 cutting his days into thin slices. How we both hated bells. The last thing he heard at night was the night watchman walking the city walls outside his dormitory window, ringing his bell and calling out, 12 o'clock, a fine night, and all's well. But he knew, as I knew, as everyone knew, that all was not well, that a great war was coming. His letters and mine were full of the dread of it. Then the storm of war broke. Like many storms, it rumbled only distantly at first, and we all hoped it would somehow pass us by. But it was not to be like that. Father looked so grand in his khaki uniform and shiny brown boots. He said goodbye to Nanny Mason and me on the front steps, climbed into his car and was driven away. We never saw him again. I can't pretend I grieved that much when the news came that he had been killed. I know a daughter should grieve for a dead father, and I tried to. I was sad, of course, but it is difficult to grieve for someone when you never really knew. It is hard, sorry. I was sad, of course, but it is difficult to grieve for someone you never really knew, and my father had always been a stranger to me. Worse, so much worse for me, was the thought that the same thing might one day happen to Bertie. I just hoped and prayed that the war would end whilst he was still safe at college in Canterbury. Nanny Mason kept saying it would all be over by Christmas, but Christmas came each year and it never was over. I remember Bertie's last letter from college by heart. Dearest Millie, I am old enough now to join up, so I shall. I have had all I can take of fences and walls and bells. I want to fly free, and this seems to be the only way I can do it. Besides, they need men. I can see you smiling at that. All you remember is a boy. I am over 6 foot now, and I shave twice a week, honestly. I may not write again for some time, but whatever happens, I shall be thinking of you always. Your Bertie. And that was the last I was to hear of him, for a while at least. Okay, your 5 questions from that chapter. What were the 2 reasons Bertie often couldn't stay long? Question 2. What do you think of the phrase, Bertie and I lived for our Sundays? What do you think that means on page 64? Question 3. Why were there no lessons in the school holiday? Why were there no lessons for Millie in the school holiday on page 65? What was the old lady's real name? I think I've just given that away. But it does tell you on page 66 and also in the letter. And how did Millie and Bertie stay in contact when they both moved away? There are your sentence stems. Answer in full sentences and start the video again when you have your answers. Okay, the 2 reasons Bertie often couldn't stay long were that he had sometimes he had detention, or the girl's father was at home for the weekend and he was shooting with his friends. Question 2. I think the phrase means that they really looked forward to meeting on a Sunday and it got them through the week having something positive and happy to look forward to on a Sunday. Question 3. There were no lessons in the school holiday for Millie because Miss Tulips went away to stay with her sister by the sea. Okay, the old lady's real name, as we now know, is Millie. And Bertie and Millie stayed in contact by writing letters to each other. Okay, question 6. Why does Millie think that her walks with Nanny Mason are boring? You'll find that information on page 65 and page 66. Question 7. Why do you think Millie found it difficult to grieve for her father when he died in the war? Explain your answer using the text. Okay. And question 8. Do you think Nanny Mason believes there are white lions in Africa? Why do you think this? Use your text to support your answer. So that's page 66. Pause this here, have a go, and press play when you've had a go. Okay. So, Millie thinks that her walks with Nanny Mason are boring because she wanted zebras and water buffaloes and elephants and baboons and giraffes and wildebeests and spotted hyenas and a black mamba snake and vultures and lions. She wanted all of those things. She's saying if their nature walks had all of those things, she wouldn't mind. But instead of all those animals, she is seeing a few deer, a fox's hole, not even a fox, maybe a badger's set, a dozen rabbit droppings, not even rabbits, rabbit droppings, a robin's nest, and some cuckoo pint. Okay? That sounds to me like Millie is comparing her nature walks with the stories that Bertie has told her from his nature walks in Africa, or what he used to see from his compound. Okay? And she's comparing them and thinking it's really, really boring. But we know that out in the wild in England, you wouldn't see all those animals. You wouldn't see zebras and water buffaloes and elephants and baboons, okay? You're more likely to see deer and foxes and badgers and rabbits, okay? So that's why she found it a little bit boring, because she was comparing it to Bertie's. Okay, question 7. Why do you think Millie found it difficult to grieve for her father? So in this little section here, says, I can't pretend I grieved that much when the news came that he had been killed. She's quite honest here. She says, I know a daughter should grieve for a dead father, and she tried to. This is the sentence really that gives us our answer. It is difficult to grieve for someone you never really knew. And my father had always been a stranger to me. So it might be that you answer that question. I think Millie found it difficult to grieve for her father when he died because the text tells us he had always been a stranger to her and she felt as though she never really knew him. Okay, it told us earlier in the text he was always in London with work, and then when he was back, he didn't spend his time with her. He spent his time shooting with his friends. Okay, so he didn't make an effort to spend time with her. Okay, in question 8, do you think Nanny Mason believes there are white lions in Africa? Why do you think this? You use the text to support your answer. Fancy that, she laughed. You and your fairy tales, Millie. So this is where we find out her name. You read too many books. Okay. Her response to that gives us the impression that Nanny Mason does not believe there are white lions in Africa because she laughed like it was a joke. She's implying that Millie is telling a fairy tale. So she's saying, you and your fairy tales, Millie. You read far too many books. So it's almost saying that she's getting the idea that there are real white lions from a book that she has read. Okay, good job today, guys. Well done.
Hi guys, hope you all had a lovely weekend and you're ready to start our new maths topic of statistics. So you might be wondering, what are statistics? Well, if you think back to last year when you looked at bar charts and pictograms and tables, they are all statistics. So it's when we look at information and we present it in a certain way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back over your understanding of bar charts and just make sure that we're really understanding them and we're ready to go. Okay? So the first thing I want you to think about is, what are the features of a bar chart? What does every bar chart need in order for the person looking at it to be able to understand it and interpret it? I've popped a bar chart on the screen now to help you, okay? So have a think, come back when you're ready for me to go through the answers. Okay, so every bar chart needs a title, because without a title, how are you meant to know what it is that what the information is? Okay. You also need to have the titles of each axis. So number of children on this one and transport on this one. So again, we know what we're talking about, because if this wasn't if the transport wasn't there and the number of children weren't there, we wouldn't actually know what the bar chart was trying to tell us, would we? It's also important that underneath each bar there is an explanation of what it is. So for this one, it's transport. So different types of transport. It might be days of the week. It might be names of children. It could be anything. Okay, but that's really important to have there. Otherwise, again, how do we know what you're trying to tell us? And the other really important thing is to have a clear numbers going up the side. Sorry, guys. So for this one, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So they're going up in twos. So it's really important to have a clear numbered scale. Okay. So just to go over that again, we need a clear title, a clear axis title on this side, a clear axis title at the bottom here, horizontal and vertical. We need clear bar labels and we need a clear numbered scale. Okay? Right, let's jump straight into it then. I've got that bar chart back on the screen for you. So it's telling us how year 4 children travel to school. We've got the number of children on the vertical axis and we've got transport at the bottom. So car, walk, bus and cycle. I want you to have a go now, jot it down in your books. How many children travel by car? How many children walk? how many children travel by bus, and how many ride their bike. Okay, jot it down, pause me, and come back when you're ready. Okay, let's have a look then. So, travel by car. We can see here that the top of the bar is in line with the 12. So in our table, we can write the number 12. The children that walk to school. Again, it is on the line here. So it must be 14. For the bus, we're in line here. So that's an 8. And for the bicycle, we're in line here. So that is the 10. Now, I just want to point out, obviously the side's going up in 2s. If one of the bars finished in between there, obviously the number between 6 and 8 would have been 7. So that's really important to know. Can you tell me then, which is the most and the least popular way to get to school? So jot it down, which is the most popular way and which is the least popular way. Pause me while you think and then unpause me when you're ready to come back. Okay, so the most popular way to travel to school is to walk, okay? Because it's got the highest number, it's at 14. There we go. And our least popular would be the bus, okay? Because that one has only got 8. Well done if you got that. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions for you, and I want you to use the bar chart to answer the questions. So if you want to pause me and jot them down, that's fine. If you just want to think of it, however you want to do it is fine. So we're looking at cake sales. You can see here that they've forgotten their title, okay, on their axis. So we could argue that it's not a clear bar chart, but we're going to go with it anyway because it's got the days of the week. So let's just see what the questions are. So how many cakes were sold on Monday? Hopefully we've all looked there and we know that the answer to that one is 45. Well done if you've got that one. The next question is, what is the most cakes sold in one day? Okay, so I'm hoping you looked at the biggest one, which is up here, and that is in line with 60. So again, well done if you got that one. And the final question is, on which day were the least amount of cakes sold? Now this was a bit of a trick question because as you can see, these two are in line with each other. So the answer to this one is Thursday and Tuesday. Okay, so Tuesday and Thursday. Well done, guys. For your Do It today, your first question asks you to look at the bar chart and you need to complete the table in your book. So you've got truck 1, truck 2, truck 3 and truck 4, and you need to put the distance in kilometres that they travelled, okay? For the second part, you've got to look at the bar chart down here, which is the distance beanbag thrown. So you need to decide which is the furthest distance that most people could throw and how many pupils threw 3.5 metres or more. Okay, any questions, just send me an email. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help. Then for your Secure It today, Mr. Mullany says this bar chart is not easy to interpret. Find 2 ways you could improve the chart. Okay, quick clue here if you're struggling. Have a look back at what we talked about the features the bar chart might be. Have a think about his scale, his number scale. Is it clear? That's all I'm going to say. The rest is up to you. Any problems, send me an email and we'll go through the answers tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Hi everyone, it's time for our writing challenge this morning. And this week we're starting something brand new for our warm-up. So we're going to be looking at adverbial phrases. Now I know these might be quite familiar to our year 4 children, but they might be brand new for our year 3 children. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them and then we're going to have a go if we can spot them every day this week until we're all confident with it. Okay. So an adverbial phrase is a group of words that act like adverbs, okay? And adverbs, remember, in a sentence tell us how, when, where, or how often something happened, okay? So we're going to have a look at this first one together, and then we'll have a go at the bottom one as a challenge today. Okay, so you're going to have a look at where the verb is first. So what did they do in this sentence? I arrived at school much earlier than usual. So our verb is I arrived at school. So the verb is arrived. What did they do? Arrived at school. And then how did it happen, or when did it happen, or where did it happen? Much earlier than usual. Okay, so that is our adverbial phrase, a group of words telling us how, when, where, or how often something happened. Okay, so this is our thing that happened, and this is the group of words that are telling us how, where, when, or how often. In this case, it's how something happened much earlier than usual. Okay, or even when, actually, I think. So have a look at the second one. He completed the work as quickly as possible. What did he do? And how did he do it? And the how bit is the bit that you're looking for your adverbial phrase. If you're looking for an extra challenge today, what you could do is see if you can spot the adverbial phrase and then move it to the front of the sentence so that you're making those fronted adverbials, which I know that you've all learned lots about. So pause the video, have a go at the two on the screen, and then come back to me when you're ready for the answers. Okay, let's have a look at the answers for this first activity, okay? So, spotting the adverbials. I arrived at school, we talked about this one, much earlier than usual, being our adverbial phrase. So hopefully that's what you spotted. And the second one, he completed the work. How did he do it? As quickly as possible. So that's our adverbial phrase in this one. If you completed the extra challenge today, you could have moved these adverbials to the front of the sentences and then rewrote them. So it's much earlier than usual, comma after a fronted adverbial. I arrived at school. Or as quickly as possible, comma, he completed the work. Hopefully you managed to get on with that. We're going to have a look at those every day this week until we're super confident we know what we are doing. So in our writing this week, we're going to be thinking about speech, and we're going to particularly be thinking about speech in stories, okay? So today's lesson is all about why we use speech in stories and how it really works well and how we can be super effective in the writing that we are doing. So as a little bit of a warm-up this morning, what I'd like you to do is have a look at the picture of Harry Potter for me, and can you think about what he might be saying? Now you can jot that down in your workbook, or you can just think about it in your head. But what do you think Harry might be saying in this picture? Pause the video. Have a little think. Okay, so what could he be saying in this picture? Well, he could be saying, wow. He could be saying, oh my goodness, look. And I can tell that by his face. So hopefully you've got something in yours that shows that he's feeling a bit shocked as well. Okay, so now we're going to have a little look at what happens when we put speech into stories. And we're going to use Harry Potter all the way through this week to help us to understand why we use speech in stories and what the effect of that is on the reader. So let's have a little look at a first extract, okay? So I want you to see if you can spot the speech in this extract and then think about why we've used it. So extract 1. This is in your work pack if you want a bigger version as well. As Harry squelched along the deserted corridor, he came across somebody who looked just as preoccupied as he was. Nearly Headless Nick, the ghost of Gryffindor Tower, was staring morosely out of the window, muttering under his breath. He wore a dashing plumed hat on his long curly hair and a tunic with a ruff which concealed the fact that his neck was almost completely severed. He was pale as smoke, and Harry could see right through him to the dark sky and the torrential rain outside. Nick folded a transparent letter as he spoke and tucked it inside his doublet. Nearly Headless Nick waved an elegant hand. In spite of his airy tone, there was a look of great bitterness on his face. He erupted suddenly, pulling the letter back out of his pocket. Nearly Headless Nick shook his letter open and read slowly. Fuming, Nearly Headless Nick stuffed the letter away. Okay, did you spot any speech in that? No. Is it still quite effective as a story? Maybe. There's lots and lots and lots of description in this extract. It uses lots of description to show us what's going on, but we don't know exactly what's going on because we can't hear the words that the characters are saying with it. So we're lacking a little bit of detail. So if we try and put some speech into that, let's see what the difference is and what difference that makes to our effect on our reader. So we're going to use the same extract and we're going to put some speech into it. But before we go into it, we're just going to have a look at some of the words that you might not have understood. Okay, so preoccupied means that he was thinking about something else. He wasn't thinking about what's happening now, he was thinking about something else. Morosely is another word for sad. He was looking quite sad and quite angry out of the window. Let's have a look. A ruff is like a bit of fabric that goes around your neck, what people used to wear in the olden times. So it's a bit on the shirt. Severed, his head was chopped off. It was completely cut off. It was almost severed. And then torrential. Torrential rain means that it's raining heavily outside. And then we had doublet, which is like a type of jacket that you might not have known as well. Okay, so let's put the speech in. And your question here is to think about what the effect of putting all of this speech in has on the reader and spot the speech as we go through. Okay, stay with me. Let's read. "Hello, Nick," said Harry. "Hello, hello," said Nearly Headless Nick. "You look troubled, young Potter," said Nick. "So do you," said Harry. "Ah," Nearly Headless Nick waved an elegant hand. "A matter of no importance. It's as though I really wanted to join, thought I'd apply, but apparently I don't fulfil the requirements." "But you would think, wouldn't you," he erupted suddenly, "that getting hit 45 times in the neck with a blunt axe would qualify you to join the Headless Hunt?" "Oh yes," said Harry. "I mean, nobody wishes more than I do that it had all been quick and clean and my head had come off properly. I mean, it would have saved me a great deal of pain and ridicule. However, we can only accept huntsmen whose heads have parted company with their bodies. You will appreciate that it would be impossible otherwise for members to participate in the hunt, such as horseback, head jumping, or head polo. It is with great regret, therefore, that I must inform you that you do not fulfil the requirements. With very best wishes, Sir Patrick Delaney Podmore." Okay, so did you spot the speech in that story? Lots and lots of speech. How do we spot the speech? Well, we've got our speech marks here around the words that are being said. Okay, so we've spotted lots and lots of speech. So we've gone from an extract that was full of description to an extract that's full of speech. So what did we gain by putting the speech in? What do you know about Headless Nick now? What do you know about Harry now that was different than we learnt about in the first one? Have a little think. Okay, that's super. So I think you learn from this that Nearly Headless Nick is quite posh. A matter of no importance, it says. I don't fulfil the requirements. The other thing we learn about Headless Nick in this one that we didn't learn in the first one was what that letter was about. So in this one, the author kept the letter secret because he didn't tell us what it was about. But this one, he reads the letter out loud to us. It's about the Headless Hunt, and he didn't get into the Headless Hunt, although he applied. Okay, let's think about what we learn about Harry in this extract. So you'll think that he says, "Hello, Nick." "So do you." "Oh, yes," said Harry. So those are the three things that Harry says in this extract. And I think you get the impression that Harry's a bit shy, a little bit worried, a little bit wary about Headless Nick in this extract. But you don't get that in the first one. Okay? So here is all the speech that I hope you were able to spot in that second extract. And as you can see, almost all of it is now speech. Okay? So we're going to have a look at one more example. Again, this is in your workbook, so you can see it on a bigger screen if you'd like to. And this time the author has mixed extract 1, the description, and extract 2, all of the speech. And I want you to see if this one is more effective because it's got a mixture in than the previous two that have gone before it. Have a little listen and see what you think. Okay, extract 3. As Harry squelched along the deserted corridor, he came across somebody who looked just as preoccupied as he was. Nearly Headless Nick, the ghost of Gryffindor Tower, was staring morosely out of a window, muttering under his breath, don't fulfil their requirements, half an inch if that. Hello, Nick, said Harry. Hello, said Headless Nick, starting and looking around. He wore a dashing plumed hat on his long curly hair, and a tunic with a ruff which concealed the fact that his neck was almost completely severed. He was pale as smoke, and Harry could see right through him to the dark sky and torrential rain outside. You look troubled, young Potter, said Nick, folding a transparent letter as he spoke and tucking it inside his doublet. So do you, said Harry. Ah, nearly Headless Nick waved an elegant hand. A matter of no importance. It's not as though I really wanted to join. Thought I'd apply, but apparently I don't fulfil the requirements. In spite of his airy tone, there was a look of great bitterness on his face. But you would think, wouldn't you, he erupted suddenly, pulling the letter back out of his pocket, that getting hit 45 times in the neck with a blunt axe would qualify you to join the Headless Hunt? Oh, yes, said Harry, who was obviously supposed to agree. Okay, so let's have a look first at the speech. So you can see here that suddenly, different to Extract 2, we've got less speech, but perhaps we still understand the same things that Extract 2 gave us. So we still know that Harry's feeling a bit worried and a bit shy. From hello, Nick, so do you. Oh, yes, he's still saying the same things. But those great big rambling speeches that nearly Headless Nick did become little bits that we find out. So we are just, the author is dropping us little hints, but making us, as the reader, do the work to try and work out what's going on. So they're giving us clues, but they're not giving us all of the information, and that makes it a little bit more exciting for us. So we've got don't fulfil their requirements, half an inch, if that. We certainly know that he's a bit posh, a matter of no importance. We've also got the idea that he was joining the Headless Hunt because it tells us the exact bit of the text that's really important for us to know as a reader. So what are all the other bits? If we're not using speech all the way through, what are these other bits that the author has blended in? So if we have a look at these, we've got some bits that I've highlighted in blue. I wonder if you can spot what the blue bits are. Harry squelched, looking just as preoccupied as he was, staring morosely, muttering under his breath, starting and looking around, folding a letter. Have you spotted what word is in all of these? Folding, starting, squelched, staring, muttering. Can you spot it? Well done, everybody. The blue bits are the action that's happening in this extract, okay? They tell us what's going on so we can see it as well as hear it. So now we've got the speech, so we can hear what's going on. We've got the verb phrases that tell us and show us what's going on so we can see it. So what's the green bits? He wore a dashing plumed hat, which concealed the fact that his neck was completely severed. He had a look of great bitterness on his face and an airy tone. Can you see what those bits are? You're absolutely right, they're the descriptions. So as well as being able to hear what's going on and being able to understand the action, we can now see what the characters might look like because we've got bits of description as well. So hopefully you can see from those three extracts that no speech is okay, but it doesn't give us the detail about what the characters are thinking and feeling. Too much speech in Extract 2 doesn't allow us to see what's happening, it just allows us to hear what's happening. But Extract 3, which mixes the description and the action and the text, the speech that we're listening to, allows us to see it, to hear it, and to understand what's going on. So hopefully you can see that that's a really good way to use speech in stories for a great effect. So in summary, speech is important in stories because it moves the action on. Okay, it tells us what's going to happen and it moves it on. But it also tells us a lot about the characters. We learned lots about Headless Nick and Harry from the words that they said. Okay, a story with no speech is not very engaging because it doesn't seem very real. A story with too much speech is not engaging because nothing happens. We lose the action and we don't learn enough about our characters to see the pictures in our heads when we're reading. So what we're going to try and remember to make our stories really effective is when we use speech in stories, it's most effective when we weave, when we mix together our speech, our action, and our description, because that's what makes it interesting, engaging, and moves the story on for our reader. So this week, that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be thinking about what the characters say, but we're also going to be thinking about what the characters do and what the characters look like, so we can write sentences that weave our speech, our action, and our description together. Okay, so let's have a look at what our activity is for today. So this is an example of what you are going to be doing today, and we're going to have 3 pictures. This is the first one as an example, and 2 more that you're going to fill in. And what I've done is I've taken some pictures from the film for you. So this is a picture of Harry and Ron, and what they're doing is staring at a crystal ball, okay? But then I want you to think about what they might say. So Harry might say, "Look, did you see that?" And Ron says, "I can't see nothing, mate. Just a bunch of cloudy stuff." Okay, and what's happening? They're staring at a crystal ball, okay? So that's what I want you to do when you are writing today. Look at the picture on the screen, look at the characters, which I will give you their names, think about what they might be saying in that picture and put those down, and then think about the action that they're doing at the same time. So what did they say? What are they doing? And in your workbooks, you can record it like this. So Harry, and then a colon to tell us what he's saying. "Look, did you see that?" Ron, and a colon. "I can't see nothing, mate. Just a bunch of cloudy stuff." And then the action and the colon, staring at the crystal ball. Okay? So that's what I want you to do today for the next 2 pictures. So here's the first one for you to have a look at. We've got a picture of Hermione and Harry, and what do you think they might be saying and what action's happening? So pause the screen and have a go at that one. Okay, and on to your next picture, which is the last part of your writing for today. So this time you've got this picture. Again, you've got Hermione, but this time you've got Draco Malfoy, the baddie in Harry Potter, in this first book. What are they saying? What action's happening? Write that in your workbook. Okay, brilliant. I hope you've really enjoyed thinking about what they might be saying today. We're going to work on this tomorrow, and we're going to build in some extra things into our speech writing and learn how to write our speech with speech marks tomorrow. So thank you for listening for your writing lesson today. We're going to have a little look at connected curriculum now, because it's a brand new week, it's a brand new Monday, so you've got a brand new challenge in your connected curriculum. We're staying with our geography theme this week, but this time we're going to be looking at mountains, volcanoes, and earthquakes, okay? So lots of our wonders of the world are created or exist because of these things: mountains, volcanoes, and earthquakes. So today, what I'd like you to do is the essential task, the one that I'd like everyone to do, is click on this video introduction. This is in your work pack, so you can access that. And then on your video introduction, it tells you all about mountains, volcanoes, and earthquakes as a starting point. After you've watched that, the challenges for this week that you might choose to do are based on one's on mountains, one's on earthquakes, one's on volcanoes, okay? So our mountains challenge this week is all about looking at how mountains are formed and looking at explorers who've conquered the natural wonders of the world. So we're finding about Edmund Hillary and how he conquered Mount Everest. And then you can choose how to show that knowledge with us. So maybe making a poster, making a video, writing a diary of Edmund Hillary, or a fact file. If you'd like to find out more about earthquakes, and that's what you're interested in, there is some information included in the work pack, a little PowerPoint that you can read through that tells you about earthquakes. There's a couple of little videos that you can find out more about earthquakes, and once you've done all of that, again, choose to show me how you know what you know about earthquakes. You could do an earthquake survival guide. You could make a poster. You could do a presentation for us. You could create a structure and test whether it could stand an earthquake, so do some earthquake shaking with that. Or you could draw a map to show us where the Earth's tectonic plates are, or anything else you want to do that shows us what you now know about earthquakes. If you're interested in volcanoes, you can have a challenge about volcanoes, lots of videos to watch about volcanoes and why they erupt. And again, There's lots of things that you can do with volcanoes. You could create a PowerPoint, you could write a diary about living through a volcano eruption. You could draw or build a model to show us what the inside of a volcano looks like. You could do a news report about a volcano erupting. You could create your own model volcano. And if you want to, you could even use some of the science activities to make your volcano explode. Okay, and there's an example of an activity at the bottom for you to use. Remember, these are all optional, so you can choose what you want to do. Choose the best way to show it, but we'd really, really love it if you do have a go at any of these challenges, if you let us know and share them with Miss Cunnington and Miss Foster, because they really, really want to find out what you've been working on in your connected curriculum this week. So I'll see you tomorrow for another writing lesson. Have a lovely rest of the day, and we shall see you soon. Bye, guys.